On March 5, 2009, Michael Jackson stepped onto the stage at London's the O2 Arena and announced what he promised would be his final tour. "This is it." Fans screamed, cameras flashed, and millions watching around the world believed they were witnessing the return of the greatest entertainer of all time. For a moment, it felt as though the clock had turned backward. The king of pop stood beneath blinding lights, smiling as thousands chanted his name. Years of controversy, financial struggles, and public isolation suddenly faded behind the excitement of a comeback nobody thought possible. His voice still carried that unmistakable softness and mystery. His movements still held flashes of the magic that had once captivated entire generations. But looking back now, one question still haunts people everywhere. Was this truly a comeback? Or was the world unknowingly watching the final chapter of Michael Jackson's life unfold in real time? Just 3 months later, on June 25, 2009, Michael Jackson was found dead inside his rented mansion in Los Angeles. The announcement spread across the globe with terrifying speed. Television networks interrupted broadcasts. Radio stations stopped their music. Fans collapsed in tears outside hospitals, homes, and landmarks across multiple countries. How could someone so famous, so carefully watched, die so suddenly? And even more disturbing, why did the official explanations leave so many unanswered questions behind? Only one day before his death, Michael appeared alive and energetic during rehearsals for This Is It. Footage recorded on June 24 shows him singing Earth Song and They Don't Care About Us with intensity and focus. He dances across the stage, gives instructions to musicians, and even jokes with crew members. To many fans, those clips are deeply unsettling today. Because when you watch them closely, Michael doesn't look like a man about to die. He looks determined, hopeful, maybe even excited. So how could a performer rehearsing at that level be gone less than 24 hours later? The deeper investigators looked into Michael's final months, the darker the story became. Originally, the This Is It residency was supposed to consist of only 10 concerts in London. It sounded manageable. A limited farewell event designed to celebrate his legacy while avoiding the exhausting schedules that had damaged him physically in the past. But then ticket sales exploded. Within hours, demand became historic. Fans from every continent rushed online to secure seats. The excitement was so massive that promoters expanded the schedule again and again until the total reached 50 performances. 50 shows. At age 50. After years away from major touring. Could any human being handle that kind of pressure after spending years struggling physically and emotionally? Or had Michael already realized he was trapped? People close to him later claimed he became deeply anxious about the growing number of performances. According to several reports, he privately admitted that he never intended to perform that many shows. Some even said he feared his body would not survive the schedule. Yet walking away was not simple. For years, Michael had faced severe financial problems despite earning billions throughout his career. Lavish spending, legal battles, debts, and declining music sales had created enormous pressure behind the scenes. The tour represented more than a comeback. It represented survival. And powerful business interests were depending on him. Would anyone truly allow the world's most famous entertainer to simply cancel everything after millions of dollars had already been invested? Or had the machine become too large to stop? As rehearsals intensified in June 2009, troubling signs reportedly began appearing almost everywhere around him. Crew members noticed dramatic weight loss. Some described Michael as painfully thin, almost fragile. Others claimed he appeared exhausted and mentally distracted. Makeup artist Karen Fay later recalled seeing him in a condition she found alarming. Then came another disturbing detail. Michael reportedly struggled to remember lyrics and dance routines he had performed for decades. Imagine witnessing one of history's greatest entertainers suddenly forgetting songs that once came naturally to him. What would you think if you saw that happening? Would you believe he was simply tired? Or would you begin fearing something far more serious was happening behind closed doors? As days passed, concerns inside the production reportedly grew stronger. Some rehearsal sessions ended early. Other times, Michael failed to appear at all. Staff members allegedly whispered about insomnia, medication use, and emotional instability. Still, preparations continued. Nobody wanted to stop the tour. Not after the massive publicity. Not after the record-breaking ticket sales. And certainly not after so much money had already been committed. By June 19th, the situation reportedly became impossible to ignore. Director and choreographer Kenny Ortega later described Michael as weak, cold, confused, and emotionally distressed during rehearsals. According to Ortega, Michael appeared physically unstable and unable to properly function. At one point, Ortega claimed he wrapped Michael in blankets because his body temperature seemed dangerously low. Others described him as shivering and disoriented. Imagine the atmosphere inside that room. One moment, the crew is preparing the greatest comeback concert in music history. The next, they are staring at a frightened and exhausted man who can barely keep himself together. Did some people realize then that something terrible was approaching? Or did they convince themselves Michael would somehow recover before opening night? Behind closed doors, pressure increasingly shifted toward Michael's personal physician, Conrad Murray. Murray had been hired to remain with Michael full-time during tour preparations. Reports later revealed that his enormous monthly salary was being paid by concert promoters connected to the tour rather than directly by Michael himself. That detail immediately raised questions. Who exactly was Murray working for? Michael Jackson? Or the billion-dollar production depending on Michael's ability to perform? One controversial email from executives would later attract enormous public attention. In the message, Murray was reportedly reminded that the company, not Michael, was paying him and expected cooperation regarding Michael's condition. Critics argued the message exposed the real priority behind the scenes. Keeping Michael functional. Keeping rehearsals moving. Keeping the tour alive at all costs. But Michael's problems stretched far beyond exhaustion. For years, he had battled chronic insomnia, anxiety, emotional trauma, and dependence on prescription medications. Many believe the cycle began in 1984 after a horrifying accident during the filming of a Pepsi commercial. A pyrotechnic explosion severely burned Michael's scalp, leaving him in terrible pain. Powerful painkillers soon entered his life. And according to people close to him, they never fully disappeared. Over time, the medications reportedly evolved from temporary treatment into emotional escape. Fame isolated him. Constant media scrutiny crushed him psychologically. Trust became difficult. Sleep became nearly impossible. Then came the devastating aftermath of his 2005 criminal trial. Although Michael was acquitted, many friends later described him as emotionally transformed afterward. They claimed he became increasingly paranoid, withdrawn, and fearful of betrayal. Some said he stopped trusting almost everyone around him. Could years of stress and public humiliation have permanently damaged him emotionally? And if so, was anybody truly helping him, or merely managing him? By June 2009, sleep itself had reportedly become Michael's greatest obsession. Night after night, he allegedly struggled to rest naturally. According to later testimony, he begged doctors for stronger solutions. Normal sleeping medication no longer worked. His body had reportedly developed tolerance after years of heavy use. And that desperation would eventually lead investigators toward one of the most shocking details in the entire case. The use of propofol. Propofol is not an ordinary sleeping pill. It is a powerful surgical anesthetic normally used in hospitals during medical procedures. Patients receiving it are typically monitored closely with specialized equipment because the drug can dangerously slow breathing and heart function. So why was Michael Jackson allegedly using it nightly inside a private bedroom? And more importantly, who agreed to allow that to happen? After the troubling rehearsal incident on June 19th, an emergency meeting reportedly took place involving Kenny Ortega, Conrad Murray, and executives connected to the tour. Ortega expressed serious concern about Michael's physical and emotional condition. But Murray dismissed those fears. According to reports, he insisted Michael was healthy enough to continue. The rehearsals moved forward. And then something strange happened. In the days before Michael's death, several people around him claimed he suddenly appeared stronger again. Rehearsal footage from June 23rd and June 24th seemed surprisingly energetic. Crew members described him as focused and engaged. Some even believed he was finally turning a corner. Was he genuinely improving? Or was adrenaline temporarily masking a body already reaching its limit? Nobody knew that within hours, everything would collapse forever. During the early morning of June 25th, Michael remained inside his Los Angeles mansion with Conrad Murray nearby. According to later testimony, Michael desperately wanted sleep but could not achieve it naturally. Eventually, Murray administered propofol. What happened next became one of the most debated medical controversies in entertainment history. Investigators later concluded that Michael stopped breathing after receiving the anesthetic. Murray claimed he briefly left the room and returned to find Michael unresponsive. But critics immediately questioned his story. Why was a surgical anesthetic being administered inside a bedroom instead of a hospital? Why was there allegedly no proper monitoring equipment present? And why did emergency responders later report delays and confusion before 911 was finally called? As paramedics arrived, chaos filled the mansion. Attempts to revive Michael continued while fans outside remained completely unaware that history was changing forever inside those walls. At 2:26 p.m., Michael Jackson was officially pronounced dead. The world froze. Outside the hospital, crowds gathered in tears. Fans held posters, candles, and flowers while helicopters circled overhead. Across social media and television, disbelief spread rapidly. Many people simply refused to believe it. How could someone larger than life suddenly vanish? Even today, years later, millions continue debating the circumstances surrounding his death. Some blame addiction. Others blame Conrad Murray directly. Some point toward the intense pressure surrounding the tour itself. And others still ask a far darker question. Did the people around Michael Jackson truly protect him? Or did they push him beyond the point where survival was possible? In 2011, Conrad Murray was convicted of involuntary manslaughter for the death of Michael Jackson. Yet for millions of fans across the world, the conviction never truly ended the mystery surrounding those final hours. Because the deeper people looked into the final weeks of Michael's life, the darker and more unsettling the story became. A global superstar battling relentless insomnia. A comeback tour growing far beyond its original scope. Executives demanding perfection. Doctors administering dangerous medications behind closed doors. And a man desperately trying to carry the impossible weight of being Michael Jackson one final time. Perhaps that is why the footage from June 24, 2009, still feels so haunting today. When people watch Michael moving beneath those glowing stage lights during rehearsals for This Is It, they are no longer simply watching rehearsal footage. They are watching the final public moments of one of the most recognizable human beings who ever lived. And maybe the most chilling part of all is this. As the music echoed through the arena and cameras captured every move, nobody inside truly realized they were witnessing the end of an era. In the weeks leading up to his death, concern about Michael's physical condition had already started spreading among people close to the production. Rehearsals for the planned London concerts were intense, exhausting, and demanding. What originally began as a limited series of performances had rapidly expanded due to overwhelming ticket sales. The pressure surrounding the comeback became enormous. Could anyone realistically handle that kind of expectation at 50 years old? Especially someone who had spent decades living under non-stop public scrutiny? Crew members later described seeing two very different sides of Michael Jackson. Some days he appeared weak, exhausted, and distant. On other days, he suddenly transformed into the performer the world remembered, sharp, energetic, and completely locked into the music. That contrast confused many people around him. How could someone reportedly struggling so badly suddenly perform with such precision? On June 23 and 24, witnesses said Michael appeared revitalized. Dancers, choreographers, and musicians later recalled that he seemed unusually focused and motivated. During rehearsals, he sang live vocals, practiced complicated dance movements, and carefully directed lighting and sound cues. The footage shocked the public after his death because it seemed to contradict the image of a man supposedly near collapse. Watching him glide across the stage, many fans asked the same question. Did Michael himself know how serious his condition truly was? Or was he trying to convince everyone, including himself, that he could still overcome the exhaustion consuming him behind the scenes? To those inside the arena, the rehearsals appeared hopeful. Michael spoke passionately about giving fans an unforgettable experience. He reportedly wanted the concerts to inspire people emotionally and spiritually, not just entertain them. But beneath that determination was a dangerous reality few fully understood. For years, Michael had struggled with severe insomnia. Sleeping naturally had reportedly become almost impossible for him. Night after night, he searched for relief through increasingly powerful medications. And according to investigators, that dependence would ultimately become fatal. Late on the night of June 24th, after leaving rehearsals, Michael returned to his rented mansion in Los Angeles. Although exhausted physically, he reportedly still could not sleep. Hours passed during the night as Conrad Murray attempted various sedatives and medications. None of them worked. Imagine the frustration inside that room. A man physically drained from rehearsal. A doctor trying one medication after another. And the clock slowly moving toward morning while sleep never arrived. According to Murray's later statements, Michael became increasingly desperate as the night continued. Eventually, he reportedly begged for the drug he called milk. That drug was propofol, a powerful surgical anesthetic normally reserved for hospital operating rooms and closely monitored medical environments. And that immediately raised disturbing questions. Why was a surgical anesthetic being administered inside a private bedroom? How had such an extreme solution become part of Michael Jackson's nightly routine? And why did nobody stop it before tragedy struck? Medical experts later emphasized how dangerous propofol can be without proper monitoring equipment. In hospitals, patients receiving the drug are carefully supervised because breathing and heart function can suddenly fail. Yet according to prosecutors, Michael was receiving the drug inside his own home. Sometime around 10:50 in the morning, investigators say Murray finally administered propofol after other medications failed to make Michael sleep. Shortly afterward, Jackson lost consciousness. He would never wake up again. Roughly an hour later, Murray noticed Michael had stopped breathing. What happened next would become one of the most controversial and disturbing parts of the entire case. Instead of immediately dialing 911, Murray reportedly spent critical minutes attempting to revive Michael himself. Prosecutors later argued that those lost moments may have destroyed any remaining chance of survival. Why wait? Why not call emergency services instantly? Those questions would haunt the investigation from the very beginning. At approximately 12:13 p.m., Murray finally contacted Michael's assistant instead of emergency responders directly. Even then, according to testimony, he reportedly described the situation only as a bad reaction. As panic spread throughout the house, security guard Alberto Alvarez entered the bedroom and encountered a chaotic scene. Michael Jackson lay motionless on the bed. Murray was allegedly attempting CPR with one hand while Michael remained on a soft mattress instead of a hard surface. Medical professionals later criticized those actions, arguing they were ineffective under the circumstances. But investigators became even more disturbed by another allegation. According to Alvarez's testimony, Murray instructed him to collect medication bottles and 4 bags before paramedics arrived. That detail immediately intensified suspicion. Prosecutors argued the doctor appeared more concerned about removing evidence than focusing entirely on saving Michael's life. Could valuable time have been wasted during those cleanup efforts? And if so, why? Only after those actions, according to testimony, was emergency assistance finally requested. By the time paramedics arrived at the mansion, Michael Jackson reportedly had no pulse. Even then, emergency responders continued fighting to save him. He was rushed to Ronald Reagan UCLA Medical Center, where doctors worked desperately for more than an hour attempting resuscitation. Inside the hospital, the atmosphere quickly turned surreal. Medical teams understood they were treating perhaps the most famous entertainer on Earth. Outside, rumors had already started spreading. Fans gathered near the hospital in confusion and fear, desperately hoping the reports were false. Then came the announcement. At 2:26 p.m., Michael Jackson was officially pronounced dead. The world entered shock almost instantly. Television anchors struggled to maintain composure during live broadcasts. Radio stations interrupted regular programming to play Michael's music continuously. Crowds gathered outside hospitals, homes, and public memorial sites across multiple countries. For millions of people, the news felt impossible to process. How could someone who seemed larger than life suddenly be gone? And how could it happen so suddenly after rehearsal footage showed him dancing only hours earlier? As global grief intensified, investigators began uncovering details that made the tragedy feel even darker. Shortly after Michael's death, Murray allegedly asked permission to return to the house in order to retrieve what he described as cream from the bedroom. Michael's assistant later testified that the request immediately seemed suspicious. Why would retrieving cream matter during such a catastrophic moment? Fearing potential evidence could disappear, security personnel reportedly locked down the property before Murray could re-enter the room. Investigators soon focused heavily on the large quantity of medications found at the mansion, particularly the propofol. Experts argued the level discovered in Michael's body could not easily be explained away as accidental self-administration. Murray, however, maintained a very different version of events. He claimed he had only stepped away briefly and suggested Michael may have administered additional medication to himself while the doctor was absent. But prosecutors argued that explanation made little medical sense. During the trial, forensic pathologist Christopher Rogers testified that Michael's deep level of sedation would have made such actions highly unlikely. Eventually, the official ruling declared Michael Jackson's death a homicide. In 2011, Conrad Murray was convicted of involuntary manslaughter and sentenced to 4 years in prison. Yet because of prison overcrowding and good behavior policies, he served only about 2 years before being released. Even today, Murray continues insisting he was not responsible for Michael Jackson's death. But for many observers, the tragedy was never only about one doctor. Instead, it became symbolic of something much larger and far more tragic. A superstar crushed beneath unimaginable expectations. A man trapped inside a life where fame never truly allowed rest, privacy, or peace. A performer still trying to satisfy the world while privately battling exhaustion, anxiety, financial pressure, and dependency. And perhaps that is why those final rehearsal clips continue haunting people so deeply. When audiences watch the footage today, they often see two entirely different stories unfolding at the same time. On the surface, there is the legendary entertainer dancing beneath brilliant lights, still capable of captivating everyone around him. But underneath that image lies something far more painful. A deeply exhausted man hiding unbearable pressure behind a perfect performance. A man determined not to disappoint millions of fans waiting for his return. A man pushing himself beyond human limits because the world expected Michael Jackson to always remain larger than life. And perhaps that is the most heartbreaking part of all. Because even during the final days of his life, Michael Jackson still managed to convince almost everyone around him that everything was okay. Until suddenly, it wasn't.